video. There we go. And of course, I am taping this. Everybody say hello to the hybrid class. Wow. Okay. All right. It's late in the day, guys. All right. New Zealand has been struggling. Their indigenous population, their native peoples, are the Maori. They make up about 15% of the population. 75% is of European descent. But they have been doing something that we've been struggling with for almost 200 years. They've been having a conversation about race. Okay, everybody aware of what's going on in Virginia right now? What's going on in Virginia?
The top 3 people in charge of the state are in a major scandal.
Yeah, all independent scandals, all at once.
The head guy.
The governor.
The governor, thank you. He's in trouble for, there was a information leaked where...
Well, it wasn't really leaked. It was in his yearbook.
It was in his yearbook where he was supposedly being the guy in a KKK costume next to someone wearing blackface for it.
Yeah, well, they initially thought he was the guy in blackface, standing next to the guy in the Ku Klux Klan costume, and he came out on last Thursday, and said, came out on Friday and said, I'm very sorry, this was clearly a mistake, I should never have done this, I'm very, very sorry for all the offense this picture has caused. Then he holds this press conference on Saturday, and he said, I looked at the picture, and I don't think it's me.
And he's going to say,
yeah.
To prove it.
Yeah, well, but his way of saying it, I know that wasn't me because I know how hard it is to get shoe polish off your face because I did go in blackface to a Michael Jackson dance contest.
So you try to make things better.
Yeah, and he said, which I won, by the way, because I knew how to moonwalk. And the reporters at this press conference are going like... And then a reporter honestly sits there and goes, you won because you knew how to moonwalk? And he goes, yeah. And he said, well, do you still know how to moonwalk? And what is the appropriate response to that? Let's not talk about it. That's not what we're here to talk about. No, the governor of Virginia looks at the stage to see if he's got room. And then his wife goes, that's not appropriate. And then he says, what could only be worse? She says it's not appropriate. Okay? Then the Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, who's the up-and-coming African-American politician in the Democratic Party, guy's going to be huge in the next 10 years. Some allegations of sexual assault that have been hanging around suddenly blew up. Okay? So on Friday, the Attorney General, who's third in line, says, Governor's got to resign if he was in blackface. Yesterday at noon, the Attorney General said, well, yeah, I went to a party in blackface. So as of now, there's the potential that all 3 of the top representatives of Virginia are going to have to resign.
And a lot of Democrats are very...
Yeah. So, and and then they claimed, and both the governor and the Attorney General said, well, it was 1980. And I was in college, and okay, I went to college in 1980 in the Deep South. I went to Auburn University, and we knew it was not good to go to parties in blackface. That's just not acceptable. Okay? New Zealand, on the other hand, has over the last 100 years been really trying to engage their Maori population and make sure the Maori culture is engaged in New Zealand. And I want to show you a couple of things because what Prime Minister Ardern is speaking about in this relatively short speech. I'm going to spend more time running up to this speech just because I love these clips. And I have access to YouTube in the classroom, which I think is a great way to spend time. The first thing is, this is the New Zealand national anthem from 2011 at the Rugby World Cup. I want you to listen to the words. Okay. Did you notice the first verse? It's not even the first verse. They don't even want it to be called a verse. The opening is sung in Maori. It's always sung that way. The English part is always second. All right? Now, at about this time, in about 2011, they began to realize, somebody realized that the English part and the Maori part did not sync. The translation of the Maori into English did not match up word for word with what the English version was. And so there was a big move in some parts of New Zealand to change the wording of the Maori part. The governor, unlike the Star Spangled Banner, the government of New Zealand owned the copyright for their national anthem. And they get to say when they do and when they don't change it. It is held by the Minister of Arts and Culture. And the Minister of Art and Culture came out and said something I thought was incredibly cool. He said, the Maori part of our national anthem, Ate Ore, stands as its own cultural artifact and does not need to be validated by the English. And I was going like, I just was so overwhelmed by that. Same thing in this country, what happened? A state legislator down in Texas found out that a high school down near the Mexican border was singing the Star Spangled Banner in Spanish. And so he introduced a law saying it was illegal in Texas to sing the Star Spangled Banner in Spanish, which is hideously unconstitutional, but still. In New Zealand, that would be unconscionable. Now, anybody know what the national sport of New Zealand is? Rugby. It's rugby, okay? They are 8 million people in that teeny tiny little country, 2 islands in the South Pacific, have dominated world rugby for 100 years or more. One of the reasons why is they start off every rugby match with something called the haka. Now, American commentators usually refer to it as a war dance. That's not only insulting to the Maoris, it's also insulting to the Native Americans. Just don't ever say war dance. It's just not good. It is more of a symbolic physical challenge or salute to another warrior. Okay? This happens to be a Rugby League World Cup match between New Zealand and Tonga. Tonga has something very similar called the Sipi Tau. And I just want you to watch this.
Followed by Sipi Tau from Tonga. In front of a packed house here.
And listen to the reaction of the crowd during this.
Just a wonderful atmosphere. A sea of black and red. It is just stunning scene here for this clash. Now Adam Blair with the haka for New Zealand.
Yeah, I was in Murrayfield Stadium in Edinburgh when New Zealand played Scotland, and with 80,000 people there and no amplification, throughout that stadium you could hear those guys slapping their thighs and pounding their chest. I was on the receiving end of that once. My team, we were horrible. We were from the American base in North Yorkshire when we went to play rugby against the British engineering unit. We didn't realize that they were brought in some guys from the engineering school, so they had like 8 or 10 New Zealanders playing for them that Saturday. And we were talking to him saying, hey, we didn't know you brought any ringers, you know, and one of our guys was a little upset about the fact that they had these Kiwis playing. So after the ref came out and talked to us, we're heading to the opposite ends of the pitch to get ready for the game. And this jerk turns around and goes, what, they're not going to do the haka for us? And the 2 Maori guys in the New Zealand contingent just went, okay. And so we all got lined up, and our captain pushes this guy in front of us saying, oh, no, you're the dumbass who started this. You get to be, you know. And they're like 3 feet from this guy doing this, and you can literally see him shaking. I mean, we're 10, 15 feet away, and they're pounding their chest so hard you can literally feel it. I mean, and yeah. And then as we walked off, our captain, who was a British Army guy, just goes, well, I think we can all agree that was an effing bad idea. We lost by 80 points. They just destroyed us. They came out just angry and just destroyed us. Great game. They bought us all a bunch of beers afterwards, but still, I mean, it was bad. But every family has their own haka. Every school, every Boy Scout troop, every military unit. If you look up, they did one at a wedding. They do them a lot at funerals as a salute to their departed friends. Of all the ones I've ever seen, this is one of my favorites. This is the women's. Yeah, I just like to. Yeah, like just. I just. You know, my wife will hear me at 2 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep, and she'll hear that coming out of the office. She just goes. She'll go walking in and goes, "Are you watching haka videos again?" I'm going, "Oh yeah, okay." But what you see, I mean, I've seen videos of everybody knows what curling is, right? You know, where you slide the stone and the guy runs up with the broom. Their curling team does the haka before a match. Basketball, ice hockey. They hate soccer down there, but they do have a national soccer team. They all do it because they have looked at Maori culture and worked very hard to make sure the Maori culture is respected, honored, and incorporated into all their traditions. And one other thing, we talk about cultural appropriation in this country, okay? Europeans do not lead the haka. If you're Tongan, Samoan, the only people who would ever lead a haka would be a Maori, period, close quotes, end of sentence, not even discussed. Okay, and if there's not a Maori in the group, they just don't do it. Okay, that's how much they respect their culture. So this is Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. A little background on what's going on here. This is New Zealand Day in Waitangi. Waitangi, in 1840, when the Brits finally figured out where New Zealand was, they came ashore. They met with the Maori chiefs on the North Island. They said, the French are coming. We'd like to sign a mutual defense treaty with you. And they did. Well, that was the British excuse to invade the country and take it over and just start dominating. Okay, so Waitangi has got great historic significance. It's also got great cultural significance. It's a flashpoint for protest. Okay, Maori people will oftentimes protest here. Every year, it used to be Watanga Day. They now call it New Zealand Day. They have a big Maori cultural conference for the this was last year. The 3 years before that, the Maori Council was so angry with the Prime Minister based on what he was doing, they didn't invite him. Jacinda Ardern was invited back. Couple of things that you need to know about. She's going to mention the Crown. Remember that New Zealand is still part of the Commonwealth. Okay, so technically they're a constitutional monarchy and their head of state is Queen Elizabeth. So when she says the Crown Maori relations, the Crown is just what they say for the government. Okay? The other thing I want you to notice, something you won't notice, probably wouldn't if I didn't point it out, she does this without teleprompters. Okay? Everybody understand what a teleprompter is and what it allows you to do? She gives this speech that you're about to see, from what I can tell, extemporaneously. Okay? And by the way, most of this conference takes place in Maori, not in English.
Kei aku nui, kei aku rahi, tēnā koutou katoa. Haere mai tātou ki tēnei rā nui, kei tēnei rā o Waitangi. E koa aru ahau, ki te tau pēne mai, me taku arahi. I kāwenga rangatira, kua tukuna mai. Aku mihi anō hoki mō ngā kupu whakatau i a mātou katoa. I want to begin by acknowledging mana whenua,
These are people's names, by the way.
Ngāti Kawa, Ngāti Rahiri, and of course Ngāpui. I want to acknowledge the members of the Waitangi National Trust who sit to my right today, particularly those to my left who have shepherded me warmly onto the whare today. I do not take lightly the privilege extended to me to speak from this veranda today, not only as Prime Minister, but as a wahine. Tēnā koutou katoa. I also acknowledge those who joined me as we walked on this marae today. I acknowledge particularly Little Kurepa, all of my team, who I'm immensely proud to stand alongside. I'm particularly proud to stand alongside the largest Māori contingent of MPs that our party has seen. And it is not just the numbers that matter. It's the fact that each and every one of them are from amongst their people and represent them. I don't know if you've noticed, but our waiata has also improved considerably from last year. I also acknowledge the other members of this government. It is made up of three parties. Our coalition partners, New Zealand First, Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, I acknowledge you, and Shane Jones, who has spoken on behalf of New Zealand First today. And our confidence and supply partners, the New Zealand Green Party, and all their MPs who have joined us today. As a government, we have been here for 5 days. I have not been on my own. We did not come simply for the beauty and the hospitality of the North. We came because there is work to do, much mahi to do. And we will only achieve what needs to be done together. So in those 5 days, we have talked about education, health, employment, roads, housing. But now we must take the talk to action. This is the beginning for our government, and I thank you. We also bring with us a special role in the Minister Calvin Davis, who holds for the first time the portfolio of Crown Māori relations. We did not create that role lightly. As we discuss here with Ngāpuhi, the treaty settlement before us, within our sights, we have to also start thinking of a nation on what extends beyond the negotiating table. It is not the end of our relationship, nor is it the end of the Crown's responsibility. Each agreement we have signed so far contains 7,000 commitments. We must be diligent about upholding each of them. We've created the portfolio of Crown Māori relations as an acknowledgement that our relationship goes beyond the negotiating table, and it will continue on with strength and with hope. I also acknowledge the opposition members who've journeyed on and the marae with us today. What seems a historic moment for all of the Parliament represented. As I stand here, I have many memories of the many times that I have visited these beautiful grounds. Not always as a politician, but once as a child. Like my first time here, I was probably no more than 7 years old. My father brought his 2 daughters to the treaty grounds because he had a great love of history. He wanted us to learn the history of the place we were living, and lucky enough. I remember standing out on the grounds, and after we finished the tour, he did something very unusual and gave to me and my sister the family camera in order to capture a snap as he posed with my mother out on the edge of the grounds. He did something that only a father could do to completely shame his 2 daughters. Just as I was about to take the photo, he grabbed my mother in the most public display of affection, kissed her full on the lips just as I took the photo, embarrassing my sister and I completely. When I think of this story, all of the reasons that these grounds hold memories for me, I can't help think of the kinds of things I would want my child to think about as they come onto these grounds, into this place. My hope is that they know this place's history, that they know on the 28th of October, Whakaputunga, the Declaration of Independence. My hope is that they would know the history of Te Tiriti and what it meant for us as a nation, and that they know that those stories, as I was taught yesterday by Ngāti Manu, those stories may be hard to hear, but I'm certain they are even harder to tell. That is our history, and we must always be honest about our history and what it means for us. I hope that they know the history even of this place, where the Māori battalion here paraded as they heard the words that talked about the price of citizenship. And I look forward to us acknowledging the role of history for the battalion here in the future as well. That is the history I hope my child will know of this place, not just on this day, but for every day that they are lucky enough to call themselves a citizen in Aotearoa. But I also hope that they know what we value collectively, but what we're probably not always good at cherishing. I hope they know the importance of manaakitanga, lessons that I've been taught and observed by Māoridin over time, that the importance of hospitality, of generosity, of caring for one another, and that it is indeed possible to have a government that does that too, just as our people do. I hope that they know the value of kaitiakitanga, that we have a role as guardians of our environment, and if we want to look after our people, we must look after the earth as well and gift it better than what we found it. And I hope they know we value the ability to speak frankly and openly to one another. Kānohi e te kānohi, face to face. And we should never shy away from that, change. And if we value that about ourselves as a nation, 364 days of the year, why would we not value it here at Waitangi? I will always maintain that we should not seek perfection on our National Day. That speaking frankly and openly is not a sign of failure, but a sign of the health of our nation. And a sign that we must keep pushing to be better. I also hope that my child will know that we have the power to change. And we must change. Kaumatua spoke about the differences between these two whares on these grounds. And if you ask me the distance between this whare and the old homestead, is the difference between us as peoples, the inequality we still have. The distance between here and here is unemployment. Rangatahi who don't have hope for their future. It's the poverty that exists amongst whānau. It's those rangatahi who don't have access to the mental health services who take their lives. It's the fact that not everyone has a decent home, a decent place to live. And it's the incarceration of the Māori people disproportionately to everyone else. That is the distance between us. And so long as that exists, we have failed in our partnership. But I inherently believe in our power to change. And I hope not only that my child believes in that power too, but I hope that they will see the change for themselves. Now, we as a government, we know what we have to do. We know all of the failings that we have as a nation, but we won't always know exactly how to change it. For that, we will come to you. We will ask you to help us. We will form partnerships together because we cannot do it alone. And I can guarantee you, particularly as this government goes out to hui amongst everyone, that there will be no marae too small for us. There will be no marae where we don't ask for that help to work alongside us. And I know that that's something that we have to now go forth from this place and prove to all of you. So when we return, in 1 year, in 3 years, I ask you to ask of us what we have done. Ask us how we have given dignity back to your whānau. Ask us what we have done to improve poverty for Tamariki. Ask us what we have done to give rangatahi opportunities and jobs. Ask us, hold us to account. Because one day I want to be able to tell my child that I earned the right to stand here. And only you can tell me when I have done it. So for now, I finish with a wise words I've heard from my tahu before. Mō tātou, a mōko hauri, a muri aki nei, for us and for our children after us. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Okay. What do you guys think of that?
Solid.
Solid. Okay. Would anybody like to expand on that?
She imparted a lot of wisdom, it seems, that she's learned from their culture and learned from her past.
She was definitely respectful of Maori culture. There is no doubt about that. Integrated Maori language into her talk where she needed to. She defined the words. Okay, but she worked on a base level assumption that every New Zealander should know some basic Maori, so she doesn't bother to translate all of it. Okay? She expects you to know that, you know, she says it right there in the end, you know, that a hui is a council. Okay, she expects you to know that. Okay, what else? She shares her personal. She made it. It was definitely a very personal speech. Okay, yeah, absolutely. What else?
I think by making it a personal speech, to grow, she's also showing that she's willing to grow as well. Especially after what you told us as far as her relations from the previous year.
Okay. Somebody over here say something. Mr. Pachignon, thank you. What do you guys think of it?
I feel like she, by doing her speech as she did through kind of, I felt like she was representing kind of both sides of it. So the way she brought it all together was very respectful to both sides, but then also it kind of showed that she was a main supporter of it and that she believed the change could happen if they work along each side, like each other's side cooperatively.
Okay. What about her nonverbals? How did she deliver it? Well, that's, one of the things we're going to talk about with manuscript readings next week is the problem with the lectern is that magical super glue they put on it to where when you touch it, your hands never can come off of it. Okay? Did you notice it in the beginning when she's doing the formal introductions, her hands are either on the side or in front of her, resting on the lectern. But then when she gets into the body of their speech, she takes a very slight step backwards. And then you see her not only gesture, but gesture either widely enough to get around the sides of it or high enough to be above it. Okay? And even though in her hands, she does at one point, I noticed, sort of clasp her pinky of her left hand. But generally her hands, even though they can come back together, her hands are not welded together. Okay? She separates her hands. You'll see that on a lot of comments that when we start giving speeches, is when you grab that note card with the two-hand grip, like it's going to fly away if you let go of it at all, I'll say separate your hands. She does that very comfortably, very easily. Okay? And then again, at the end, it's time to be more serious. She gets more formal again. The hands come back to the lectern, and she becomes much more, because it's not about her, what she has to say at that point. It's about the occasion. Okay? And she takes the focus, not verbally. What she seems to be communicating is, at the beginning and end, this is about an important occasion. It's not about me. And she was able to, put her own personal delivery. I mean, she clearly is very well-versed. And she puts that secondary in order to focus on the occasion. The one thing that I noticed, and you can see it right there, she's got like 3 note cards. You guys see, students all the time go, I got to give a 4 to 6 minute speech with 2 note cards front and back. She did that with 3 note cards. And she spoke in a second language. Okay? She did huge blocks of her speech in what is not obviously her native language. Okay? Jacinda Ardern, she spoke at the UN a couple of months ago, and again, she does every formal speech she does. She just opens with a Maori greeting. She closes with a Maori closing. She spoke on behalf, she didn't speak on behalf of New Zealand necessarily. She spoke on behalf of the South Pacific nations. Okay, Australia is going through a lot of what we're going through right now. They're very focused on their immigration policies. They're very focused on nativism. Australia first sort of thing. So they've sort of sacrificed their position as a regional leader. New Zealand is speaking up for a lot of smaller countries in that region that wouldn't get any attention otherwise. She's an incredibly interesting individual. She's surprisingly enough, she's the 3rd woman to be Prime Minister of New Zealand. They went back and they were the first nation to allow women to vote, so they've had more female heads of government than we have. She's the 2nd person in history to give birth while serving as a head of government. Benazir Bhutto, president of Pakistan, was the first back in the 90s. I think it was about 3 or 4 months after she got elected Prime Minister, she made an announcement in Parliament that she was pregnant. When the baby was delivered, she and her partner, he was going to take time off to raise the child. She would take the legally allowable 6 weeks of family leave, and then she would come back to work. She was confident in her deputy prime minister. It was a really kind of good speech, and then as soon as she finished, some old dude gets up and goes, "Well, do you not think it was appropriate to tell the New Zealand people that you were thinking about getting pregnant when you were running for election?" And she looked at him and said, "I'll answer that question if you tell me under what circumstances you would ask a man that question." Then the guy sit down. Okay, and it was over, that conversation. She is a really dynamic, clearly she's very young. She's very engaged. it's a little bit different there. She and her partner and their kids show up at restaurants in Auckland and have dinner. She's seen jogging with her one personal security person. People, when they see her on the streets, just go, "Hey, Jacinda, how you doing?" I mean, it is. I like New Zealanders, so she does really well. Not an old dude like we always seem to elect. Okay, so now comes the boring part of the day where I actually talk. Don't. Yeah. Oh, who said that?
I didn't even say anything.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is organization. And we're going to get to outlining next week. Okay, one of the things I've said in here is a speech is different than a paper. A lot of people are going to tell you that if you take your old term papers or bring them in and read them, you're going to be fine, right? Okay, that's not true. Written disposition, and verbal or vocal disposition are different. Giving a speech is different than writing a paper. What's some of the differences between giving a speech and writing a paper? Actually talking, obviously. Okay, what else?
If you spoke the entire paper, you bore people.
If you read a paper, you would bore people.
Yeah, in a paper, you're like writing word for word, but in a speech, like you just do you don't have to write like everything.
The language is much more, you're going to say flexible,
Yeah.
much more extemporaneous, can be less precise because of that, because you don't know word for word. You can't go back and reread your speech and change every word. What else?
Some words you would usually use. Like, sometimes when you write a paper, you try to switch up your words.
You don't, well, I just right there. You don't use don't in a formal paper. Do you get do your English teachers allow you to use contractions? No. Okay. You can't use, do they allow you to use slang? No. Okay. So the language can also be less formal. What else?
I think overall, like, the communication level is just different, and the delivery level as well.
How do you mean by different?
So when you communicating to like an audience is like listening to you, the delivery is different than like writing a paper. Like everybody just saying like
Okay.
the language and the words.
Clearly delivery is different, but I think what you're also seeing is the level of engagement is different. It's much more personal when it's spoken, when it's a public speech, right? Because you've got people sitting there. What do you get all the time when you're giving a speech?
Feedback.
Feedback. When you turn that paper into your English instructor, how long does it take you to get feedback?
A week.
Who knows? But when you're standing up here giving a speech, how long does it take you to get feedback? Should get it immediately and continuously. Okay? Some of these we fit. Speech is more flexible. Once I write a paper and turn it in, or if I publish something in a newspaper, can I go, no, I want to change that. Okay? I will tell you, people that have sat in on some of my lectures, I've had people that have watched me give the same lecture 3 times, and they go, you do realize you gave 3 different lectures. Yeah, but I hit the same points every time, right? I communicated the same information. But yeah, you illustrated it with 3 completely separate discussions at each one. And we're like, okay. They seem to, it depends on what if the student says something that brings something to mind, I'll go with it. Okay, so it's more flexible. Speech is immediate feedback. We just discussed that. If I'm giving a really boring speech, I should know that pretty much immediately, right? If I write a really boring paper, I might not find out about that for months. Okay? Oral communication is faster. So everybody notices the little red box on the wall over there? Light starts flashing. Okay. I'm going to give you evacuation instructions. Please read them and follow them. Now what happens is the person sitting back there is going like, what the hell? I'm getting mine last. Okay? I'm going to die. Okay? So I can give you written evacuation instructions, or I could go, follow me. And then I take you outside. Okay? So oral communication can be much faster. There are no visual cues for organization with a speech. When you get a paper, what are some of the visual cues you get for organization? Periods, Punctuation, I hadn't even thought about that one. What else?
Paragraph.
Paragraph markings, you know, lines, white space, indentation, lines, white space, indentation. You know, every time you see that white space and that indentation, there's a new idea coming. What else? Titles? Yeah, up at the top of the chapter markings at the top of the page, the little, Roman numeral 3 says you're going into something completely different. What about boldface? Okay, that's a visual cue. This is important. You don't have any of that in speaking. You can't reread a spoken paragraph. How many of y'all have ever been reading something, I don't know, maybe a public speaking textbook? You guys aren't doing the readings, right? I got 4 people going, sure. Yeah, of course we are. How many of y'all have been reading a text, you get about halfway down a page, and you just think to yourself, dude, I've been reading a lot of words, but I got no idea what this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
What do? You go back until you remember something that you remembered. Oh yeah, I was paying attention here 2.5 pages ago, and then you go back through. If you're given a 10-minute speech and you look out there and you realize at 5 minutes you've lost everybody, what are your options? What? And that's possible. Given some circumstances, it will be possible to look at people and go, hold on a minute, I clearly lost you guys. Where were we? Okay, but then you lose control of the speech. If you drop back and go back to where you think you lost them, then how do you look? Disorganized. Okay? You can't stop reading. You can stop reading a paper. You're sitting there on your couch. You're reading a paper. You get the little grumblies. You remember there's a can of Vienna sausages in there on the counter? Yeah, who eats Vienna sausages in here? 3 people. 4 people that will admit it, including myself. You pop the top. You pour that jelly stuff out. That's really just nasty. Then you just pull them one at a time out of the can. Okay, 7 per can. Fantastic. What?
What would be like, okay, so you said...
You interrupted my Vienna sausage story for a question.
Yeah, legitimate question.
All right, let's see how... All right, go ahead.
Instead of sausages. But, so say like you're doing like a speech, right? And what's the proper way to, if you can like tell they're kind of like confused about something?
We'll get to that in a minute. Back to my Vienna sausages. So I eat my Vienna sausages, which my family pronounces Vienna. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. You go back to that paper that's been sitting on the couch. Where are you in that paper? Exactly where you were when you left off. Okay? There is a book sitting on my dresser, 13 Hours in Benghazi. I was reading that book when we moved up here from Tampa. It's August of 2015. Don't know what happened. Can't remember why. But at about chapter 3, I got distracted and I put that book down. That book is sitting in the same place it was when I put it down in September 2015, 3.5 years ago. If I go back and pick up that book, where am I? Exactly where I was 3.5 years ago. Now, I may go back to the beginning of the chapter, okay? But I'm still at that place. If somebody's giving a speech and you zone out, walk out, or you leave for like a couple of minutes, where is that speech when you come back in? In a different place, that speech has moved on. Okay? There's no revision possible for written paper. When should you revise your speech?
Before you give it.
Constantly. Okay? If I look out here and I throw a topic out, and I look out at this class and I can see everybody's going like, because it's a pretty smart class. Okay? Well, see, people laugh when I say that. Every time I say, this is a pretty smart class, just pandering to the class, somebody goes, yeah, right. Okay? But if I look out there and you guys are going, all right, yeah, got it. And you start asking questions that indicate to me that you understand, I can shoot through that section. But if I've got another class and they're like sitting there going, I slow down and I go into deeper depth with it. So you should be constantly revising. Okay? And as we already discussed, there's a much higher potential for misunderstanding with a speech because your language will be less precise. Okay? Some research. You don't have to write all this down. I just need you to remember a couple of key points. I mean, again, I tell you over and over again, this goes back 3,000 years. Cicero was a Roman senator at the time of Julius Caesar. He was considered the greatest speaker of his age. He said an effective speaker has two tasks: determine the key points and put those key points in an orderly sequence. All this research from 70 years ago, what it tells you is a less organized speech is going to be deemed negatively, and a less organized speech is going to make you as a speaker less credible. Okay? And if we remember Aristotle's ethos, pathos, logos, ethos, your ability to persuade or inform is going to be dependent on your personal credibility. And Baker proved in 65, and this is still the standard, that if you're less organized, you're less credible. Think about it. Somebody gets up here and just starts rambling on. Do they seem like an expert on anything? No. I would hope you would say no. Okay? So let's talk about ways to organize. Patterns. First is chronological. What does that mean? What does chronological organization mean? In a timeline. Organizing ideas as they exist in time. What would be a good idea for a chronological organization? History is really good. Hey, the Stamp Act was passed in 1762, really ticked off the American colonies. 1776, they signed the Declaration of Independence. 1783, they won their independence. 1787, we passed the Constitution. Okay? Ordered in time. What would be another good idea for chronological? Cooking. A recipe. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That's why I throw all these questions out, because like punctuation, I would have never thought of punctuation. Okay? Any process that goes from step 1 to step 10 or whatever is good for a chronological speech. Okay? Changing it. I asked, somebody said this earlier. Everybody know how to change a tire? And a person in my earlier class said, yeah, you pull over to the side of the road, call your boyfriend. And I'm like going, I asked before I let my daughters, I drive their car. I said, you know how to, they took driver's ed where they learned how to change a tire. So you know how to change a tire? And they both said, oh yeah, I know how to change a tire. And I said, okay, by saying that, what that means is, if you have a flat, you do not call me to come help. Because I will not come. You know how to change a tire. And they both went, well, maybe we should just go over it real quick. I was going like, okay, a little refresher course. And they're like, well, yeah, that'd be fine. Okay? But how to change a tire. You're driving along the road, and again, this happened in an earlier class, my 8 o'clock class this morning. You're driving along the road, pop, whap, 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 whap. What do? Somebody's freak out. Somebody sitting up front said, you get out of the car and go to the trunk. And I'm like going, well, that's maybe the second thing you do, because the first thing you do is pull over to the side of the road and stop. And he's like going, well, yeah, okay. But I mean, you want to discuss things like that. You open the trunk, you pull the cover off, you spin the wing nut, you pull the tire out, you put it over there. You get your tire tool and your jack out, you loosen the lug nuts. You jack it, you place the jack, you jack it up, you finish taking the lug nuts off, and you go through it step by step. Okay? Narrative order. What's a narrative? Just what's a narrative? It's a story. There's a thing in psychology called narrative theory that says I can give you facts, but if I make it a story with characters and plots and conflict, like a novel, you're going to remember it better. That's why people always, and it always is a historian, it always ticks me off that people will read historic fiction and they will remember it better. And that doesn't tick me off because people read historic fiction and remember it. It ticks me off because history teachers teach history so crappy. Because they do chronological progressions. They don't try to tell stories. Okay? But if you look at history as a narrative, it makes it much better. Okay? So if you want to talk to somebody about how you get a Social Security card, okay? Don't talk about the 4 steps of getting, hey, young Bob had come to this country when his parents immigrated here, and he needs a Social Security card. So let's talk about how Bob gets a Social Security card. Okay? Now that sounds stupid. but it helps people remember. Okay? Think about it like this. If I walked up to you right now and pointed at you and said, tell me a joke, most people would go, knock, knock, I guess. And they might pull out something from like 4th grade, right? But if I said, hey, do you know any funny stories, anything like that? Most people would be able to come up with a humorous anecdote about themselves. Okay? Topic order. Okay, this one I'll give to you. Topic order is when things don't break down naturally into any other way other than to put it in divisions and departments. So I was going to go out and talk to people about what we teach here at Aiken Technical College. Okay? There is no chronological way to do it. There's none of the other ways would fit. So what I would do would be, I'd say, okay, we're broken down into 5 different schools. We have the School of General Education. We have the Nuclear Safety School. We have the EMT School. We have the RadTech, whatever. And I would discuss what each school taught. Okay? Everybody understand that? Okay? Next is spatial order or spatial pattern. It's supposed to have an N on the end of it, by the way. And when I say spatial, I don't mean it like you're spatial. I like you. Okay? What is Just trying to see if you guys are still listening. What does spatial pattern mean, you think? What does spatial mean? Has something to do with space.
Is that like giving it time to talk about the next thing, or like, I don't know.
Okay, what about space?
How they relate to each other.
How they relate to each other as they exist in physical space. Okay? Like if you want to talk about the Mississippi, we're going to talk about the headwaters in Minnesota. We're going to talk about the middle river around Missouri. We're going to talk about the southern part of the river around Arkansas and Mississippi. Then we're going to talk about the Delta. You go from north to south. Okay? We're going to talk about beach erosion in Florida. We're going to talk about the northern Gulf Coast. We're going to talk about the western coast of Florida. Then we'll talk about the Keys. And then we're going to talk about the Atlantic coast in the east. Okay? Spatial order. You know what else is good for spatial order? Procedures. We talked about chronological, but also, okay, in the Army, because the Army wants to make sure everybody gets everything, they make everything real simple. So you have to do what's called PMCS, Preventative Maintenance Care System. You have to be ready. I mean, you guys check your oil every 2 weeks. Or do you just wait for the light to come on to tell you? Now your dashboard says, change oil soon. Okay? The Army, you go out there and you pull the fluids and you check everything. Because you got to be ready to roll as soon as the orders come down, right? So the way they teach you to do PMCS is you start it, and it doesn't make any difference if you're driving a Jeep or you're driving a tank. Same process. You start at the front. Check the front bumper. Make sure it's not dented. Make sure it's not broken. Make sure there's no rust. Make sure it's still attached to the frame. Once you've inspected the bumper, you look at the grill. You make sure the grill is not dented or broken. It's not rusted. Air can flow through into the engine to cool it. Then you check the headlights. Are the headlights working? Is glass broken? Are they still affixed to the fenders? Once you do that, you check the hood. Is the hood still flat? Does it attach? Is it? You open the hood. You look at the engine compartment. First thing you see is the fan. Are all the blades there? Is it serviceable? Are they broken or cracked? Right behind that are the belts. And they teach you everything to look for. Okay? And then the last thing is, at the back bumper, is the back bumper in good condition? Is it dented? Is it broken? Is it firmly attached to the frame? Front to back, spatial relations. Okay? I had a firefighter in my 8 o'clock class was just kind of looking at me like, and I said, you're a first responder, right? Yeah, he says, you come up, what do you do? Find a guy stretched out in his front yard, what do you do? He says, we start with the head, and then we work our way down. I said, you mean you don't start with the head and then go to the knees, and then check the ribs, and then look at the fingers, and then jump to the shins and ankles, and then, no, we don't do that. Now, why don't you do that? Because we'd miss something. Okay? I said, same way with your turnout gear. How do you check to make sure you're ready to enter a burning building? He says, well, you start at the top, and you just feel your way down and make sure all the stuff is where it's supposed to be. Okay? That's spatial pattern. Causal pattern, cause and effect. Okay? Americans do not go to school all year, have a year-round school system, so we are failing in comparison to other countries in math scores. You can also do causal pattern as effect cause. because we don't go to school year round, our math scores are slipping in relation to the rest of the world. Okay? You use causal pattern along with problem solution. Okay? The problem will incorporate the cause and effect. And we're going to spend an entire day talking about problem solution. Okay? Because you're going to give a problem solution speech. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. Okay? But oftentimes with problem solution, you go effect cause. Okay? We're failing in math scores because we don't go to year-round to school year-round. So I'm going to talk to you about year-round schools. Okay? Everybody understand that? Anybody have any questions about these? Okay, we have one more that we want to talk about. Motivated sequence. Okay? Who do you think does the most public speaking training in the United States? What group of people? Not the government. Who? Not motivational speakers. Not teachers. Not the oh, no. Have you seen the president speak? Sorry, okay, I got to say this. I felt so proud the other day. Have anybody watched the State of the Union? What'd you think? No, don't answer that.
I prefer.
Best comment, I was like so proud because one of the commentators I saw said, you know, his delivery of this speech, if I was a public speaking teacher, I would give him an F. And the other little commentator said, if I was a public speaking teacher, I'd have let him get 5 minutes into it, and I would have told him to stop, go back home and practice some more. Yeah! I don't care about just somebody acknowledges that there's public speaking instruction and how it works. I'm like going, yeah! Then my wife is looking at me going, yeah, okay? So who do you think spends more time and money on public speaking training than any other group of people in the United States?
People who don't know how to do it.
Well, no, because most of these people already know how to do it and they wouldn't be doing it to begin with. They want to be perfect at it. No. Salespeople. GM spends millions of dollars. Ford, Audi, Volvo, car dealers, people who sell big ticket items, real estate agents. People who sell big ticket items spend big ticket money on making sure their people are trained. And one of the things they train in is motivational sequence. Okay? We're going to talk about that because there's the steps are very clear cut. How many of y'all have ever bought a car from a car dealer? Okay, you should be familiar, and that's the example we're going to use.
You're savage.
Oh, but the thing about it is, once you see this, you're going to be able to take control of the situation a lot easier. First thing to do is they get your attention. Hey, how you doing? I'm Vic. I'm a car salesman here. What's your name?
Troy.
Troy, what are you here for today? How can I help you?
Looking for a nice car.
Looking for a nice car. And you want to know what? We got a lot full of nice cars. We're going to be able to help you out today. So we're going to look to help you buy a new car today, okay? So what have I already done?
Tell him he don't buy a car today.
We are already restricted what we're taking. She's exactly right. I've already taken control of the conversation. I have your attention, you're focused on me, and I'm defining what we're talking about. Need. Hey, Troy. I see you drove in here. What is that, a 2007 Camry? How many miles you got on that?
150.
150,000 miles. Wow, you must take really good care of that car because you know the Camrys don't last that long. For that you've got 150,000 miles on it speaks a lot about you. But I mean, I will tell you, that Camry's not going to last that much longer. You know that, right?
I do.
Okay? So I've established that he needs a new car quick. Okay? Now, when a persuasive speech, this has got to be a correctable problem. It's got to be something that we can fix together. Okay? In an informative speech, you just have to show the audience they need more information on a topic. Okay? So you got his attention. You've convinced him, you've proven to him or shown him that he needs a new car. We move to satisfaction. Troy, what kind of new car are you thinking about today? You notice what I said there? I didn't say car. I said new car. What kind of new car are you thinking about today?
something good on gas.
Something good on gas? Hey, let me ask you a question. Troy, you got any kids? That's the right answer. Okay? You may have the little Chrome Cruncher actually hanging on your leg. Okay? But when they ask you do you have any kids? Say no. Okay? Because who's that? I don't know where this kid came from. It's not mine.
You might want to call his parents.
Yeah, I'm babysitting. Okay? Because what's going to happen if you say you have kids?
Try and get you an LCD.
Well, they're going to start upselling you because you want your kids to be safe, don't you, Troy? You do, don't you? You all do. So rather than looking at that Escort, how about we go over and look at the Escape? Okay? Yeah. Okay? Then they have to visualize. They have to tell you, satisfaction says, let me show you what's going to help. And then we're going to show you doing that solution. Yeah, well, the first part is, if you ever watch it, because the door will be unlocked, they go, hey, come on, Troy, come on over and look at this Escape. So this will be, they'll open the door, they'll reach in, they'll get the keys, they'll reach in and put it in the switch and turn the switch on. And then while they're talking to you about the car, they're going to hit the window button. And they're going to let the window down. And they're going to look and they're going to say, hey, why don't you step in here so you can see what I'm talking about? So you now have door here, car here, salesman right behind you. Where are you going to go? The only place for you to go is to sit down. And if you don't do that automatically, they're going to go, so you can see we've completely redesigned the display and we brought in a new steering wheel. You know, Troy, the easiest way for you to look at it, why don't you just go ahead and have a seat? Then what happens as soon as you sit down? He closes the door because he's already let the window down so he can talk to you while you're in the car. Okay? Somebody tell me I'm wrong. Okay? And then they sit there and say, Troy, doesn't it feel good? I mean, is that comfortable? And he said, why don't you go ahead and, feel how that steering wheel, and look, you can adjust the steering wheel. So now you are sitting in the car, you're one step away from just going, vroom, vroom, and having a good time right there. And then you know what they're going to say as soon as you pause for a second? They're going to go, I'm going to go get the tag so we can take it for a test drive. And he's not going to let you go, never mind. He's going to be gone before you're going to hear him go, let me go get a tag so we can take it for a test drive. He's gone. Okay? And then you get the ultimate visualization. You take it out on the road. It's got that new car smell. Everything dings. It's got that nice stereo. Okay? All the knobs working like your 2007 Camry, which we all know is a piece of crap. Okay? All right? And you pull back in, and they take you into the showroom. And they take you into the little cubicle. Okay? And I'm convinced that kid's picture is there all the time. Doesn't make any difference who's selling cars out of that cube. That kid's picture is still there. Okay? If you ever notice they've always got the family picture, but they're never in it, that always bugs me. Okay? The last thing is action. Troy, we want to get you in that car today. What's it going to take to sell you that car today? The price? Okay, listen, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You're going to trade your car in, right? What I need to do is I need to get my used car department to look at your car. And for a liability reason, I need you to sign this release. And he's going to slide a piece of paper and a pen over to you. And what do?
Read it.
No, you don't. You don't. Don't lie.
Telling you to look
Please
at the
make
car
sure he's
first.
speaking.
You sign that piece of paper so they can go. You said, well, I don't want to sign anything yet. Well, if we have to in case something happens. We just have to have this release. It's no big deal. It's just a legal loophole.
For the car.
Your signature is on a piece of paper. They have got you signing stuff. Okay? The really hardcore, high pressure guys will go, hey, listen, we want to go ahead and we want to get you in this car today, but just to move things forward, I would like to go ahead and get my credit guys working on this, on what your loan would look like. Okay. So if you have a credit card or like a check, I'd like to go ahead and take that into them with your driver's license. Okay? And if they get to that point, you're going to have to punch somebody in the face to get that credit card back. Okay? I've actually had to do that. I've actually had to threaten to call the cops and to have them arrested for car theft unless you get my car back out here. In the next 2 minutes, I'm dialing 911 and telling them that you personally stole my car. Okay? The guy was like, well, we don't want to leave on bad terms. Okay? Here's where students in public speaking classes fall down on persuasive speeches. They don't go to the action piece. Okay? And we're going to discuss this in persuasive speaking. Even if you're doing problem solution and you're not doing motivated sequence, you still have to give people something to do. Okay? In persuasive speaking, it's called the call to action. Okay? Got a speech, same topic, over and over again. I think I heard it 5 or 6 times last semester. Why to adopt a dog instead of buying a dog? Okay? All good speeches, all of them lacked one thing. Okay, great. You've informed me that buying a dog is better. Got it. Or adopting a dog is better. You didn't tell me where to adopt a dog at. You didn't tell me how to do it. You told me, so you've informed me it's better. You haven't persuaded me. Hey, go down. The SPCA Albrecht Center is located at this address. They're open these hours. This is the pet rescue people here in Aiken. They will come to your house and, look on their website. Here's the website, Pet Finder. Okay? Give them something to do. One of the best ones I've heard since I've been up here. I was in a meeting, and I think it was a Chamber of Commerce meeting. And the person who was speaking said, all right, I know everybody in this room has a smartphone. I want to see you get your phones out. Not you guys. Okay? Everybody get your phones out. And he just stood there, and everybody sort of just looked awkward. And he said, no, I'm not kidding. Take out your phones. Everybody took their phones out, and he said, open your phone and go to your contact list. We're adding a contact. And everybody's like, oh, okay, all right. And he said, here's the number. And he read off a number. And he said, I'm going to give it to you again. Did anybody not get that number? And I look around the room, and 80% of the people are putting the number in their contact list. And he's going like, okay, here's who that is. That is Governor McMahon. Actually, it was Governor Haley at the time. That is Governor Haley's office number. I want you today, as soon as this meeting is over with, go out and call Governor Haley's office. Tell her what you think about this. Okay? You think anybody did it? I don't know. But I guarantee you, if all he said was, you should call the governor, nobody would have done it. Okay? But he gave them an action. He gave them a call to action. They were already 2/3 of the way through with it. Okay? They had already participated in the process. They had gone as far as to create a contact. They were already taking action on whatever he was persuading them to do. Okay? Everybody understand that? Okay? Now, and again, you notice what I did with this? While explaining the narrative sequence, or the motivated sequence, I did it as a narrative. People think, oh, I couldn't turn anything into I turned this into a narrative. Okay? Ooh, it's one of those little tricky teacher things. Okay? But now, whenever you see the motivated sequence, well, 2 things. Number 1, when you see the motivated sequence, you're going to remember it because you said, oh, yeah, that's what car dealers use. Hopefully next time you go to a car dealer and they go, yeah, what's going to happen is, hey, how you doing? My name's Vic. And Troy's going to go, get the hell away from me. I'm on to you. Okay? Now the hybrid people are going like, they didn't see any of that. Okay? All right, does anybody have any questions? Okay, we're going to cover outlining. We're going to do, everybody calm down. Don't rush. I've still got 3 minutes. Okay?